All right, we're live. We are live. And what did you want for Christmas? Did you want a Texans beatdown? Because that's exactly what you got. Texans fall to the Ravens. The offense doesn't score a single point. The defense actually outscores uh, the offense. And what you get is one of the biggest beatdowns of the season. And look, as much as we could sit here and harp on this, my question would really be like, what did you really expect from this squad? Did you expect this team? Did you expect this squad to go out there and perform at a high level? Like, what were your expectations for this game? Furthermore, the result of the loss, you can make a case is actually better than the win. If you're just talking about trying to win the one playoff game and then go lose in the second round, because the bottom line is this team is not, they're not on the same level as the Ravens. We learned that. We know that. They're not on the same level as the Chiefs. The Chiefs haven't even peaked yet. They're starting to peak. And they're not on the same level as the Bills, despite beating them earlier in the season. Buffalo didn't have their receivers. Buffalo didn't have their interior. And oh, by the way, that game's going to be in Buffalo. So this is really nothing new from what this Texans team is. Now, did you expect them to compete a little bit more? I guess I would have just rested the guys, quite honestly, because I don't think there was anything. I don't think there was anything to gain from putting these guys out there. There was nothing to gain. If you won this game, if you let's say somehow you end up winning this game, you know what happens? You get them in round one. You can't compete with them. That's what you end up getting. And there's going to have to be some sort of coming to Jesus meeting this offseason. I still think this defense is good enough to where you can win one playoff game and maybe you can at least show up, unlike what you did today. But there needs to be a serious coming to Jesus meeting when it comes to the offense and the Texans and how they evaluate guys, how they use guys, how they play guys. Because the offense, and again, this is why it's nothing new. The offense just doesn't take advantage of the opportunities that this defense provides for them. They don't take advantage. And the margin for error is so low that whether it's against the Chiefs when you get screwed over by the officials because they take away the touchdown that should have been a strip sack, or whether it's today when you get a safety and then the offense gets the ball and they get a call today. Let's be honest, that wasn't pass interference on Marlon Humphrey, and the offense turns it over on downs. They don't take advantage. We've seen it many times. Early in the season, Stingley gets an interception. He goes inside the 50. You don't take advantage. The offense doesn't take advantage. We'll get to the offense in a second because I think we gotta really be fair. And I know that Bobby Slowick is the guy that people have the least sweat equity in, and he's the guy that people have the least desire to support. But this was not all Bobby Slowick. CJ Stroud wasn't good today. CJ Stroud wasn't good. So let's just be completely honest. CJ Stroud today, that was Osweiler like. That was Brian Hoyer like. That was Shea Rosenfels. That was Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was bad. CJ Stroud was bad. I mean, there was a time where they had a chance to answer the momentum and he missed 3 throws in a row. He's running out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage and not throwing the ball away. And does that mean that the offensive play calling is good? Absolutely not. Does that mean that the offensive line is good? Absolutely not. Does that mean that the wide receivers are getting open? Absolutely not. But CJ Stroud wasn't good. And we have a natural tendency to blame Bobby Slowick and the offensive line. CJ wasn't good today. And there was talk about there was two conversations we were having at the start of this. It is a locker room post game show. I'm gonna get to those in a sec. First, I'll go to the super. Tiemann says Stroud is not yet on fraud watch, but it's getting painfully close to that territory, missing open throws with a clean pocket. I don't know if it's getting close to fraud watch, and I don't even know if CJ Stroud has really regressed. Strong case can be made that he has. I heard Greg Olson say that his accuracy has regressed, but maybe we just overreacted to 1 year. We saw it with Sauce Gardner. We saw it with Derek Stingley. And I'm not sitting here saying that that's a bad thing. That's the beauty of sports. What's true today is not true tomorrow or yesterday or whatever. That's the beauty of it. But maybe there was just an overreaction. Maybe CJ Stroud is closer to the Jared Goffs and the Jimmy Garoppolos of the world, where everything has to be perfect and the systematics of the offense have to be perfect. If that's the case, Bobby Slowick's not the guy. Maybe he's just in his own head because of how much of a beating he's taken with this offensive line. Maybe they don't have the right receivers for him. But I've heard a couple of things this week that I just kind of roll my eyes at, and that's, oh, well, look at these injuries. Tank Dell was a non-factor for a large chunk of this season. And that might not be a Tank Dell thing. That might be more about the system, but he was a non-factor. This offense had issues before they lost Tank Dell. So don't bail them out. I mean, there was 2 1-catch games, a 2-catch game, and a catchless game from Tank Dell, which is frustrating because we kind of started to get a little sign of what he's about against the Chiefs, or at least what he looked like last year. And that's frustrating because you wonder where the hell that's been all year. But don't bail out this offense and this offensive process and this system and this evaluation by saying, well, the injuries piled up, because that's garbage. That's not the case. But there are 2 things that we talked about this year when it came to getting to the next level. 2 things. And they've both changed significantly. The first one, from a team perspective, was the Texans are trying to get on the same tier as the Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens. Battle-tested squads, contending squads. The Texans are trying to get to that level. Well, let's look at what's happened as we sit here on the Locker Room postgame show. You're still looking up at the Chiefs. You're still looking up at the Ravens. And you're still looking up at the Bills. And all of those teams have added things to their squads to make them better, specifically on offense. The Chiefs added Xavier Worthy. They added DeAndre Hopkins. They added Hollywood Brown, who is going to be a mofo in the playoffs. Shout out to BetUS. Spoiler alert, whatever their playoff matchup is, whatever the yardage is for Hollywood Brown, I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over, and I am not hesitating. Promo code YouTube 150. If you want to take advantage of that, you get a 150% bonus up to $2,000. But week 1 playoffs, BetUS, I am taking the Hollywood Brown over in receiving yards. Might even take him to get a touchdown. So shout out to BetUS. The Bills added Amari Cooper, and Shakir's a factor now, and James Cook has evolved into a really, really good running back. So all these teams have gotten better, and you're still looking up at those teams. But here's where the problem lies. And this is where you kind of look at this season and say, okay, where do we go from here? The company that you had looking up at those teams has gotten a little bit more crowded. Denver's here. The Chargers are here. Pittsburgh's still here. And then you have these teams that are right beneath you that aren't that far beneath you to where they can make that jump as well. And they're looking up at you, and they probably think it's more realistic to get to where you're at than it is for you to get to where those 3 teams are that you're looking up at. They could still win their first playoff game. But what does that really mean? You go back to where you were before, and you're still looking up at the same teams. Then there's the other factor. We'll get to the super chat. MH We Nation says, I still can't believe we beat the Bills. They didn't have Shakir. They didn't have any receivers. Their entire defense was banged up. I wouldn't put too much into that. They did make Josh Allen look pedestrian. And they deserve props for that. But then you have the CJ Stroud thing. And it kind of feels like people don't want to address it. But this notion that CJ Stroud is, knocking on the door of elite, that is beyond premature. That is beyond premature. The Ravens had superior offensive weapons. They got 2 tight ends that I would take over any tight end that the Texans have in Likely and Andrews. They had that second touchdown before the second half to Likely after the 67-yard reception to Andrews. They have that. They have Derrick Henry, which is kind of like what the Texans did with Mixon. They have backs behind him that can make plays. They have Zay Flowers. They have Bateman. And they have a quarterback that whenever stuff is off script, he can make plays. It doesn't have to be perfect for him. We haven't really seen that with CJ. We've seen bits and pieces. We saw a little bit last week with against the Chiefs, a little bit, but we haven't seen that consistently. So you're looking up at these teams and you're looking up at these quarterbacks, and it seems like it's a long, long ways away. Long, long ways away. Defense outscores you. Defense gets more points than the offense. That's just wild. It's just wild. And let's just go back through the game. We'll go through the rundown. This one will be a little bit short. Be honest, I want to watch some basketball. I kind of want to cleanse my system of this. That's how disgusting this game was. We don't need to hear from D'Amico, CJ. We'll handle that on SNL. Subscribe to the SNL channel as well. Cody Stoots, Landry Locker. You can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, all that as well. The game started with a little chippiness. You had Joe Mixon getting into it with Josh Johnson, of all people. I guess there was a ball that hit a Texans assistant coach. So you had a little back and forth between Joe Mixon, who, by the way, he seems kind of frustrated out there. And I don't really blame him. He seems very frustrated with the whole process and the way things are going. I didn't even want him on the field today. You got to rest him up. You got to try to get him going. Joe Mixon's been a non-factor recently. Blocking, I think that has a lot to do with it. But you can see the frustration of this Texan squad through Joe Mixon. Then we had the Ravens opening drive. And I want to kind of focus on this one. This was an eye-opener for anyone who follows the Texans and anyone who's followed the Texans within the last under 10 years. Because you had 2 visuals that really just told you where you stand with the Baltimore Ravens if you needed to know. Because let's be honest, whenever you turn on a game, regardless of how cynical you are, regardless of how little you believe, whenever you turn on a game, there's always hope that, maybe they'll show up, maybe they'll get the job done. They might not win, but maybe we'll see them put together a nice effort. That first drive, that was enlightening. Like, I saw the light on that first drive. I saw the light because I saw a Baltimore Ravens team that started your season off last year with an L, and they ended your season with an L. And then I saw one of the biggest Texans killers of all time just completely physically dominating you and doing what he's done to the Texans for the majority of his career, just making them look like a peewee team. And last year, the Texans kept him in check. Well, I mean, when Will Levis is the quarterback, it's easy to zone in on him. You can't zone in on Derrick Henry when Lamar Jackson's back there, and they got those weapons. But that first drive was just an eye-opener. It was completely enlightening. And you realized it's not just Buffalo and Kansas City. The Texans don't belong on the same field with the Baltimore Ravens. Fortunately for them, the good news is they won't have to see them in the playoffs in the first round. And if they cross paths with the Ravens in the playoffs, that means you made an AFC Championship game and you flipped the switch. And this thing has completely turned upside down, and we're singing the praises of this squad. But you most likely, you're not going to have to worry about the Ravens in the playoffs. So then you have, after that, CJ Stroud looking to answer. He sails 3 passes, misfires to 3 different receivers, and the Texans have to punt. And you hear Greg Olsen on the Netflix broadcast say CJ Stroud has regressed when it comes to accuracy. I don't know whether he's regressed. He damn sure hasn't progressed. And he's not playing as well. So, yes, you could say he's regressed. Just got ahead of ourselves there. So you're sitting there, kind of awkward, 7-0 for the Ravens. And then Will Anderson, after the Ravens settle for a field goal, he attempts to give the Texans momentum. And this is the recipe for success for the Texans that we've talked about for a while. The defense, the special teams. Will Anderson, he gets 2 TFLs. He's fired up. D'Amico's fired up. Almost looks like he's about to tackle D'Amico. And then special teams, Tommy Townsend, one of his best punt of the year. And you saw the celebration. Tommy Townsend in the 10-0 game, he pins it down inside the 5-yard line and gives the Texans like some sort of breathing room, some sort of wiggle room. Then Kamari Lassiter goes in there. He does what he does. Doesn't matter where he plays. He's a keeper. That's a winning piece. Kamari Lassiter gets a safety. And the Texans are down 10-2, and the Ravens have to kick off to them. Then you have the Texans on 4th down. They decide they're going to be aggressive. Robert Woods gets by Marlon Humphrey. He's pushing Marlon Humphrey more than Marlon Humphrey's pushing him. Last week, the Chiefs, the officials screwed the Texans against the Chiefs. This time, the Texans get a break and a big opportunity to establish some momentum. Again, the defense, the special teams, they've given you the opportunity, but they get no points out of it. They turn the ball over on downs, and they get no points out of it. So the special teams and the defense, they bring the juice. The offense not thirsty. They were not thirsty. A lot of thirsty dudes today with the Beyonce performance. Did y'all think that Beyonce performance was as good as everyone made it out to be? I've seen her in concert. I mean, I guess it was cool. I was glad she brought out Posty. Shout out to Post Malone. I mean, but there were a lot of thirsty dudes. Texans offense not thirsty. Special teams and defense tried to hand them the juice. They said no thanks. So then even Beyonce was mid. I thought so too. So then the Ravens stopped the paper cut. I won't say stop the bleeding because 10-2, like you didn't think the Texans, like they had the opportunity for the momentum and maybe they could keep it within an arm's length, but the Ravens just completely stopped the bleeding. They stopped the paper cut. And they do so with a two-piece combo of tight ends, both of which would be light years ahead of any tight end that the Texans have on this roster. You start with Lamar Jackson finding Mark Andrews by way of Oklahoma and the great state of Arizona. Kyle Allen's college teammate, by the way. Did you know? He was a receiver. And he moved like a receiver. Lamar Jackson finds Andrews for 67. That stops the paper cut. Then Likely, who's a hell of a weapon himself, he scores a touchdown. The Ravens take the 17-2 lead. And you know that that's a wrap. Then we go to halftime. Beyonce performs. Texans come back out. And CJ Stroud starts off the second half. He throws an interception to Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton, who you might remember from such productions as the 2021 NFL Draft, 2022 NFL Draft, I should say, in which the Texans took Kenyon Green. By the way, Tyler Linderbaum, pretty damn good center out there as well. The Ravens got him as well. They got him and Kyle Hamilton in that first round. Texans got Stingley. That's a good one. But then they got Kenyon Green. I'm not trying to throw salt on wounds. It's Christmas. Apologize. But CJ throws the interception, and then Lamar Jackson does what Lamar Jackson do. He scores. Ravens go up 24-2. And from that point, it's just a chill session for the Ravens. They had another touchdown. Mark Andrews finds the end zone after getting trucked down. And that's pretty much all she wrote. 31-2. And it could have been worse. Ravens could have scored 50 if they wanted to. They kind of let off the gas. And they ended up getting the dub, and the Texans take the L. And there's a lot of things that we've seen all year that happen, and there's other things that I think that we need to take a step back and realize as well when it comes to this squad. This isn't the same defense. I still think this defense, if you just capitalize on the opportunities they give you. Kansas City last week, out of their control. The refs screwed them on that. But over the course of the season, we've seen the offense fail to capitalize on the defense's gifts. They forced 5 turnovers against the Lions in the first half, and they still end up losing. With you dead in the water, they score. The only points that you score, by the way, the defense outscored the offense. They get a safety, and then the offense comes away with no points. But here's the other thing that I think we need to look at when it comes to this defense is it's not the same defense. The nickel spot is dead. Yeah, you'll have Lassiter out there, and he'll do his thing. He's not Jimmy Ward, and he's not Jalen Petrie when it comes to that. And when you see these quarterbacks running, you see the extended plays. Even in the run game, Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward were helping a lot. They don't have that element anymore. I like Kamari inside. I like Kamari outside. I just like Kamari on the football field. But the way in which they've played defense, it's gone. It left with Jalen Petrie, and it left with Jimmy Ward. So these defensive performances that you've hung your hat on, rightfully so, they don't exist anymore, at least in the form that we saw them exist. Now, maybe you find ways to be creative, but you're kind of handcuffed. Good news is I think DeMeco Ryans will be able to capitalize and maximize what he has to work with. Bad news is that still might not be enough. And the offense still, even when you do your job, the offense, they're not complementary. They're not complementary. You talk about complementary football, the offense is not complementary at all. So that's just where things are. Back to the super chat. T says, Texans have appreciate you, team. Merry Christmas to you. Texans have a franchise edge, corner, and wide receiver. Still a lot of work to do, but the pillars are there. Yeah, they got some good pieces. I don't disagree with that. They got some good pieces. Ain't no doubt about that. Gustavo, shout out to you, my friend. Till this day, I'm mad they let Ben Johnson walk out of the building. I'm glad I didn't leave the house to go to see that game. Yeah, I'm at my mom's celebrating Christmas going on in there right now. Yeah, I don't know if Ben Johnson's Ben Johnson here, but he's better than Bobby Slowick. So there is that. Bo, CJ pathetic today. The O-line has broken him. I do think there's something to that. I do think the confidence is struggling, but the performance hasn't been good. It's okay to say that. It's okay to admit it. I don't know if they have a good quarterback coach. I don't know if they have a good offensive coordinator. I know that they don't have a good offensive line. I know that they don't have good receivers after Nico Collins, and I know that the tight ends lack explosion. That's what I know. But the coaching staff, from the quarterback coach to the offensive coordinator, there's going to have to be some sort of evaluation of that whole process. And it's not about injuries. It's much more to it. Blaster Lord says, be honest, this is a lost season, isn't it? The offense looked horrendous. I wouldn't say it's a lost season. I would just say that there's going to have to be some sort of revelation. There's going to have to be some sort of approach in all areas to improve the offense. But I wouldn't say it's a lost season. You never know what happens when you get in the playoffs. I'd feel a lot better if they had Jimmy Ward or Jalen Petrie. I think those are your most costly injuries at this point. But yeah, Kevin Smith, shout out to you, my friend. Appreciate you. All the teams we're looking up at have good offensive schemes and good O-lines. We lack both. Can't build a solid house without a good foundation. Merry Christmas to you and your family, Landry. Thank you very much, Kevin. And the crazy thing is about Baltimore, and you see this kind of with Kansas City as well, and you've seen it with Buffalo. They've made changes on offense when they've needed to. And that's really where we're going to figure out about D'Amico Ryans. And he's early in the game. D'Amico Ryans could tread water, run it back with Bobby Slowick. It could look the exact same, and he's still going to be fine, because then they'll just hire a new offensive coordinator and you'll figure it out, or you can be proactive. The Bills fired Ken Dorsey last year. They have Joe Brady. They haven't looked back since. It's good offense. Chiefs, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They change the way they play. They evolve. Andy Reid is one of the most prolific offensive minds of all time. And then you have Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's won MVP with two different systems. They constantly change. So how will the Texans evolve on offense? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Nathan says this is the 2015-16 team. The difference is that team had a better offense than what we have. I agree. No, it was a better offense. No doubt about it. It's a bad offense. It's really bad. Really, really bad. There's no doubt. It's not good. Biggest takeaways from the game. Lawson on the super. 17 noon kicks next year, please. Yeah, that's another thing. I don't think they adjusted too well to the spotlight, did they? I mean, it threw off my body clock. I definitely don't think they were used to it. Now, you're going to get some primetime games. But yeah, it definitely fell off. Cody says, I believe it's optimistic at this point to believe that we can even achieve the same amount of success as last year. So you're saying winning a playoff game? Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, who are you picking the Texans to beat right now? I mean, if you're just talking about like tangible success, so win a playoff game and lose in the divisional round, you picking them to beat the Broncos? You picking them to beat the Chargers? You picking them to beat the Steelers? I think it's a fair question. And quite frankly, in the past, even in the recent past, I'm not calling people out. I'm kind of telling on myself. But I kind of stuck my nose up to the notion, not that CJ Stroud's not elite, like we previously talked about, but I stuck my nose up to the notion that, Russell Wilson, the ghost of Russell Wilson, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, that those guys would provide the opponent with anything close to what the Texans have at quarterback. I don't know that I can say that. I don't know that I can say that CJ Stroud has a significant advantage with the way he's playing, with everything around him. With everything that he has around him and the way that he's playing at the moment. Now we've seen him flip the switch in college, but at the moment, I don't know that he's playing much better than those guys. I think he's closer to their class than he is the other three. Like, you don't even have to think about that. Like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, the ghost of Russell Wilson, and Bo Nix, CJ Stroud, come in here and play. you're down here, buddy. They're on the high dive. You're in the kiddie pool with these guys, with the way he's playing at this point. So, yeah, I'm with. I believe what you're saying, Cody, 100%. Yeah, I you put a gun to my head. I'm thinking long and hard about those, especially without it goes back to the defense. Willie Boy P, Merry Christmas, Landry. Appreciate you and Cody through the good times and the bad. That's what we're here for, man. It's not fun when this is the state of things on the offense, but that's why we're all in it together, for better or worse. Not going to lie to you, not going to gaslight you. We're going to talk about what the situation is, and that's just kind of where they are right now. That's just where it is. Biggest takeaways from this game. And we'll get to that in a second, the biggest takeaways. But first, I just want to say something else, too. And this is the ice up watch. Because I've been wanting to rest guys ever since they won the division. I'm not going to sit here. Like some people were trying to say, see, you were right. You should have rested Jimmy Ward and all. Nah, I mean, I don't mind them going out there and playing against the Chiefs. And the reality is Jimmy Ward gets hurt. We've known that. We've known that for a while. Jimmy Ward gets hurt. So I'm not going to sit here and act like they should have rested guys last week. But this week I do. I think they should have. And I think they made it out relatively healthy. But they need to have a built-in bye against the Tennessee Titans next week. And you need to see Davis Mills. You need to see Deontay Johnson. Maybe you see the starters for a quarter, like a preseason type of game, but they need to ice up. And there were a couple of things today that were really frustrating for me. And I know there's like a hardo nature with D'Amico Ryans and the former player and all that, where we keep competing and stuff like that, even if the risk does not validate the reward of going out there and playing, whatever. But I didn't need to see Joe Mixon late in that game. Joe Mixon knows how to play the football one way, and that is full speed, 100%. And he's going against a team that is basically, they know you're going to throw, and when you get the ball, they're all just trying to lay the wood so that they can hoot and holler at the sidelines. Every football team does it. I did not need to see Joe Mixon carrying the ball in the second half of that game. If you wanted to try to be a hardo and do it in the first half, but once Lamar Jackson scored that touchdown, hey, Joe, take your pads off. You're good. Get ready for the playoffs. We need you. Very dependent on you. I didn't need to see that. Then in the fourth quarter, when it was 31-2, I'll be damned, but I look up and I see Nico Collins running a go, about a 55, 60-yard go late in the game. A guy who's dealt with soft tissue injuries his entire career, a guy who missed 5 games earlier this season, and a guy who you were already extremely dependent on, and you're even more dependent on now. I see him running a 55-yard go in a 31-2 game in the fourth quarter. And you can gaslight and say, well, that's just football. You put him out there. That's what happened with Tank earlier this year. He could have gotten hurt anytime. No, you take him out. I don't need to see a guy that has a soft tissue injury running full speed down the sidelines in the fourth quarter, 2 weeks away from a playoff game in a game that meaningless. And I know he's fine. I know he's good. I know they'll probably rest him next week. But it's the Van Gundy philosophy that we always talk about here and we always practice. Don't ignore in victory what you would not ignore in defeat. You got to be smarter than that at this point. You got to be smarter than that. Like everybody has a cell phone, right? If your cell phone, and right now the Texans, if they were a cell phone, they're in red. They're probably at about 6% right now. 6%. So whenever you're going to make a phone call when you're on 6% and there's no charger in sight, you're not going to go to freaking YouTube and watch The Locker Room. Now, if you want to, you can, and I would very much appreciate that. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to SNL. But you're not going to do that. You don't want to drain your battery with that. What if something important happens? Texans were basically on 2% there, and they basically went and watched cat videos by having Nico Collins running a go in the fourth quarter of a 31-2 game. What are we doing here? What was the point of that? There was no point to that. ESG Soccer says CJ protesting having to work on Christmas. Dog do. He was bad. He was bad. He was really bad. Let's see, a lot of thirsty dudes love Beyonce. Look at my man, Mr. AD. He's got that fish. He caught that. He reeled that one in too. He didn't do that for the gram. He caught that one. He caught that fish. No doubt about it. Some guys I see holding it up, it's like, man, you don't look comfortable. That's a man who caught that fish. He reeled the hell out of that one in. But yeah, CJ was bad. The entire team was bad. No doubt. But he's not immune. There's two guys on offense who are immune to blame. Joe Mixon and Nico Collins. Other than that, the entire process is jacked up. It's often talked about as if CJ is like some sort of victim. Man, these are terrible surroundings. They might not be ideal. He's been bad. He was bad. Space City Baller says, ready for the Bryce. Looks better than CJ talk. Look, I was Bryce or bust from the beginning. I'm fine with CJ. I don't mind being wrong on that. But I mean, that is kind of like the overreact. Someone asked me, and I think it was Tony in the chat, could Bryce and CJ be the Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, where everyone's doing a victory lap after year one, then after year two, you kind of get some signs that, hey, are we sure? And then in year three, boom. I don't know about all that. I think Bryce can be a good player. I think there's some problems with seeing stuff at the line of scrimmage. I think some of these stunts should be recognized. I don't think either hot reads aren't available or they're not being seen. The accuracy is worse. The threat to run has decreased, but I'm not going to get in this Bryce thing. We need a quarterback. Come on, we're there. That's where we're at now. We need a quarterback. That's where we're at. Oh my gosh, I did not. I knew it was bad. I don't think we need a quarterback though. Wasted my parents' money on the worst Christmas. So you went to the game, I assume. That O-line would make anyone look like Lawrence Taylor. Don't disagree with you. Start evaluating wide receivers from the practice squad at this point. Yeah, Xavier Hutchinson had, I think, 21 yards, 23 last I checked. That's his second most productive game of the year. And it's not like there haven't been opportunities for him to step up. John Mechie's out there. There's a lot of stat padding. Not like that he's doing, but he made a catch on the sidelines that was like a 5-yard catch that was short of the yard marker. And he's like, doing that like it was like a Chris Carter touchdown, that ain't gonna cut it either. At wide receiver, they're not good there. So yeah, Johnny Johnson, Wayne. You say you want to get a look at those guys? Yeah, let's see what they got next week against the Titans. Let's see what they got. Deontay Johnson, we need you. Got to figure something out. But I thought it was real telling, like in this game, and this is just kind of a me uh, body language type of joint. Um, but you had the first play of the game, and if y'all are those people who go back and punish yourself and watch a game again, go back and watch. I think it was the first offensive play of the game for Baltimore. Derrick Henry like runs for 7 yards, and it looks easy as hell, like just completely easy. It looks like vintage Derrick Henry against the team. And as he's like 7, 8 yards downfield, Eric Murray hits him, and then he gets up and just kind of celebrates. And I was just like, all right, this ain't gonna be a good day. I mean, you're celebrating 7, 8 yard gains because you laid a little bit of plastic in in that physical specimen. That's the equivalent of me going like that with a fly. If that got you excited, I mean, not like a 2 or 3 yard loss like last year against the Titans when they were handling. I mean, he gained 7, 8 yards, and Eric Murray's up there flexing. That's when I knew it was a wrap. That was the first play of the game. That first drive of the game, I mean, that was a big FU drive. I mean, that was basically just knuckle up, line up, and just dominate the line of scrimmage. That first play, that was a wrap. MH Wheat Nation, shout out to you. Merry Christmas. Start elevating receivers at wide receiver. I said evaluating, you meant elevating. Yeah, I'm sure we'll see that next week. Mushroom says total offensive overhaul scheme is player dependent, and CJ regression is a symptom. Will Demeek, without the O, I see you, actually make necessary changes? Demeek, no O, Ryans, because there's no offense. AKA Buddy Ryans right now. They got to figure it out. We've talked about coaches evolving, and we will a little bit later, but they've got to evolve. Luis says, who do you want for OC next year? I want Josh McCown. I've wanted Josh McCown here for a while. Josh McCown's doing wonders with Sam Darnold. And Kevin O'Connell has him hands-on with him. Go watch the mic'd up. He is by his side the entire time. He is talking him through it. He is in this system now. I want Josh McCown. I want him as the QB coach. I want him as the OC. I want Josh McCown. He's been in more buildings than anyone in the league. He's eventually going to be an OC. We're going to look at it and say, damn, Josh McCown, still on the McCown train. Sorry, I'm not sorry. The job he's done with Sam Darnold, elite. Josh McCown. That's who I want. Jason says this team is soft and never had the grit mindset of a real team. Miko is overrated and a shame. Slow is back next year. What an embarrassment. I don't think Miko's overrated. I think he's just got to really, really, really. This is one of his first tests where he's really got to look at the offensive side of the rock. Because I put out a tweet talking about how this is an offensive minded. This looks like a defensive minded team. I saw Jerome Solomon, formerly of the Chronicle, said something to me. Let me see what he says. He says, that said, in 2 years, the Texans have scored more points than each of the teams that hired a new coach last year, and more than 7 of the 8 teams that hired one this year. Commanders / Dan Quinn. Offense has been disappointing, but it's not because they hired a defensive coach. Those are irrelevant ass stats, dude. Like that's where you're just digging up stats and like providing no nuance there for Jerome. I don't know what he's saying. That doesn't even like remotely, that doesn't click with me, those stats. Yeah, I mean, they score more points than each of the teams that hired a new coach last year. What does that mean? Yeah, that's pretty weak. I saw Jerome. I was like, oh, what's Jerome up to? Not much. Yeah, I don't know what the hell he said. I need to get a drink after that. I need to put some vodka in it after trying a 7 out of 8 defensive coaches. Okay, who's the quarterback? I mean, what are they saying about the offensive line? Like that's weird. That's unnecessary research. Don't get that at all. Lively. I think some optimism. If we play Pittsburgh first round and win, then we get another trip to KC and my homies. Yeah, and that Hollywood Brown thing, I think, is about to start clicking. I think it's about to start clicking there for him. Final takeaways before we get out of here. Put a bow on the show. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Feliz Navidad. Whatever you celebrate. Happy holidays. Takeaway number one. Elite QB and elite weapons mismatch. The Ravens have elite weapons. They have an elite QB. They have an elite system. And the Texans have none of those things. Texans have two really good players when it comes to offensive weapons. They have a quarterback who's somewhere between good and really good. And they have a entire evaluation functioning problem that needs to be addressed. That's nothing new. I'm not breaking any news. Takeaway number two, this game symbolized the whole season, past and future. It symbolized the whole season, past and future. The defense is going to have to give the offense opportunities. And if the offense doesn't capitalize with those opportunities, then that's a wrap. They have a small margin for error. Last week, the Chiefs, the refs helped them out. Texans should have had an extra touchdown, courtesy of the defense. They helped them out. Today, the safety and then the kick, you don't get the job done there. That's a wrap. Takeaway number three, the double visual nightmare. Derrick Henry, the all-time Texans killer, and Ravens, the recent Texans killers. One combination, Texans don't belong on the same field as the Baltimore Ravens. Takeaway number four, the defense. It's still a strength, but it's not the same defense that we become used to. That nickel spot has been incredible. Salute to D'Amico Ryans for making that possible, but now he has to adjust, and even the best adjustment with the full linebacker room might not be enough. So as much as we praise the defense, it's not the same defense that we've known. And they don't have the same amount of weaponry. So even the thing that you hang your hat on and you still feel pretty decent about, it's not the same. Number five, coaching evolution. We're going to have to figure out what they're going to do about the offense, how they evaluate, how they function, all that. We're going to have to figure that out. Coaching evolution. Number six, the loss was actually better than a win. So we end on somewhat of a positive. You now avoid the Ravens in round one. There's no talk about the 3 seed, so you can rest against Tennessee, and then who knows what happens. Maybe you win a divisional round, and maybe you just have the improbable W that we've seen teams like Jacksonville and the Jets achieve to win in the divisional round. But that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like the Jags, or it's going to look like the Jets. Defense, defense, defense. Offense lays another egg. They get dominated by the Ravens. So those are the biggest takeaways today. LS, back on it. Appreciate you, my friend. Giving up on CJ in his second year is stupid. The NFL has an impatience problem. Jets would take Darnold back. Browns would take Baker back. I don't like giving up on. I'm not giving up on him. I'm just saying he's not at the elite spot. And I don't. CJ Stroud's going to be the quarterback of this team for a decade. Like, unless there's some sort of flukish thing that happens, like you hit lightning in a bottle, or there's like some sort of like crazy situation where you draft a quarterback late and he ends up being awesome or whatever. CJ Stroud is the guy for a while. They're not giving up on him. He might be more surrounding dependent though than some of these elite guys. And all guys are to a certain point are. But I'm damn sure not giving up on CJ Stroud. But I'm also acknowledging the fact that he hasn't been good this year, up to the standard that he set. And I think he would agree with that. And I think most people would agree with that. But giving up on him, we need a quarterback? Nah, I ain't doing that. What percentage that Slowick is back next year? I would say 99. Say 99%. And again, same thing with Slowick. Like he's not working with the full deck either. But yeah, a lot of people mad about CJ Stroud. But we'll see how it goes. They got their quarterback of the future. Hopefully this is just kind of a little bump on the road and they figure some stuff out. So we'll see how it goes. CJ does have to do a lot of stuff better. Texans got to do a lot better, but let's just be honest. The ceiling appears to be limited. Familiar territory for the Texans when it comes to historical. Maybe win that first, probably noon on Saturday game, playoff game, and then figure it out. See how it goes. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Be sure to subscribe, like, right along. Subscribe to SNL with myself and Cody Stutes. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate y'all.